Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I've called this press conference today to notify the citizens of Joplin that I have sent an open records request to the city asking that I be provided a complete copy of the investigative report into the potential ethics violations of 2 city council members, to include copies of the transcribed direct testimony by all witnesses related thereto. My intent is to address those allegations against me and to make the report public in order to answer questions from the voters prompted by the conclusions drawn in the report. My motive in requesting the report and sharing it with the public is due to my belief that the credibility of the City Council has suffered as a result of this report, and it's essential that the credibility of the Council be restored. If we're to move forward with our recovery from the 2011 tornado, I also have concerns relative to the termination of our city manager, but I believe that he will pursue a course of action that he believes is in his best interest. Ultimately, I'm hopeful that the public will be told why Mr. Rohr was terminated, and I'm extremely concerned that his termination will become a priority in our city. Although the manner and cause of his termination is important, that process will play out over the next 6 to 8 months to a year. In that time, if his issues remain as the primary focus, we'll lose sight of what I believe must be our highest priority, and that is the tornado recovery. The tornado recovery, or the lack of it, will affect Joplin for decades to come. It's absolutely imperative, in my view, that we maintain a laser-like focus on our rebuilding effort. If we don't, we'll lose the current momentum that is now in place, and with it, our national and international reputation as the model city for disaster recovery, along with the goodwill of the 200,000 plus volunteers that donated time, money, clothes, food, water, etc. And make no mistake, wherever we are at that moment, that is the legacy we will leave for future Joplin generations. This is a critical time relative to our city's future, and it is vitally important that our citizens believe in the leadership that the council provides. To that end, in an effort to reassure the citizenry that I have done everything possible to operate in a legal and ethical manner, I encourage any citizen that has questions about how I've conducted myself to call me, and I'll sit down with them one-on-one and answer as completely as I can any questions they may have relating to my behavior. My cell phone number is 417-825-0131. If I don't answer immediately, please leave a voicemail and I'll return your call as soon as I can. Thank you. And if any of you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Mr. Woolston, is this file not available to the City Council as a client of the investigator?
My understanding, indirectly from the City Attorney's Office, is that the City Attorney's Office has a copy of the media portion, but that we apparently do not have a full copy of the report, and we do not have the transcribed testimony attached to that report. If we want the transcribed testimony, what I've been told is that we have to call the investigator. He will have someone read it to us at $135 an hour.
So are you saying that the decisions made by the City Council were made just off of recommendations? They have not viewed the report?
We have seen the full report in closed session, but it was gathered up after the closed session and all those copies returned to the investigator. We apparently do not have a full copy of the report in the hands of the city.
What do you know, Mr. Woolston, about the allegation that Mr. Rohr was the only one who had the authority to communicate with the master developer? Did that come up in the council report discussions? Can you explain what that meant?
I don't recall specifically that was discussed, but I'm sure that was part of the discussion. It was a 4-hour meeting. I don't think probably he was the only one that had communication with them. I would refer you to the update that the Walls Jolly firm gave a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure they've addressed that in there, and I would want to review that prior to making any definitive statement in that regard.
Has the council asked your council attorney for an explanation of the full Garrity warning requirements, and have you asked as a council for an explanation of the ethical obligations for disclosure of information to a client?
We had the investigator gave some explanation of the Garrity warning when we, or at least in the interviews with him, he explained that to some extent. I don't know that we probably have as full an understanding of that as we probably should. And the second part of your question, Debbie, I'm sorry.
Have you asked the council attorney to explain what the ethics rules are in regard to disclosure to a client of an investigator or an attorney, a special investigator?
I don't believe that we have asked that question directly.
What do you think some of these, I guess, impartial allegations are stemming from? What could give an investigator an inkling that it might be some unethical behavior going on?
I think that's the question, Felicia. I was called in for my initial interview, answered his questions. Subsequently, others were called in and interviewed with him. And of course, I had no idea what he told them because we don't have that transcribed testimony. But my concern is that whatever he was told, I was never given an opportunity to refute that by explanation or any other matter. It was as if he gave me one chance and he didn't want to hear any explanation of what else he had been told. I would think that's basic investigation 101. If you're told one story, you verify that through other witnesses, and then if there are differences, you call the original witness back in and get a further explanation. That was not done with regard to me.
So are you saying that you are not aware of why he would suggest that you choose between serving on council or your personal business?
I think that is an opinion he offered. I think in the original investigation, my intent was for him to provide us facts and information. I did not think that we were asking him to provide us his opinions on whether I should resign or opinions on anyone else involved in that. He was, to my mind, supposed to provide us facts, and then we would make the determination of what we did with those facts. We being the city council.
Would you welcome another investigation? Are you pushing for that? What are you hoping is the next
given the
step?
cost of this one and what I feel the value of it is, I'm a little leery. I never dreamed that we would be up to, I guess now we're up to near $70,000 or just above. And my concern is that we haven't really found out anything. The original motion that I made was so that we might get the FBI file and review anything that might be in there. We still don't have that, and I don't think that there was any criminal activity on the part of Mr. Scearce. If there were, the FBI would charge that, but the FBI doesn't look for ethics issues, and that's what I was hoping that we might find. And so that was the reason for asking for the file to begin with, and we still don't have that. So it's sadly, it appears we've spent a lot of money and don't really know much more than we knew prior to the investigation.
So do you think there's any validity in the findings of any of the investigation, anything in the investigation report? Are there any validity of the findings in regards to yourself or any other?
Well, that's hard for me to determine because we have not seen the direct transcribed testimony of the witnesses, and I think we need to compare that to what the investigator has indicated is in the report. I can give you one instance that we discussed in closed session, and I can't elaborate on it because it was a closed session, but the investigator indicated something in the report that I thought to be out of character from that particular witness. I asked him to read me the transcribed testimony, which he did, and in my mind, the transcribed testimony was directly the opposite of what the investigator had put in the report. So that was the only instance that I know of, but without the report and without the transcribed testimony, I can't look to see if there are other instances like that to see if there are other conflicts.
Mr. Woolston, we talked earlier about your abstentions from votes in regard to properties. Have you sought any further opinion or advice on whether those abstentions served to buffer you from any conflict or appearance of conflict?
I've not sought any other opinions relative to the particular abstentions. I just assumed that when I made the disclosure that I had a financial interest in the parcel, and I assumed that when I said that, most people would understand that I potentially was collecting a commission. But my practice was to declare my potential conflict. The city attorney typically asked me a couple of questions and then would tell me you need to abstain or not abstain or whatever, and always went by his advice. I guess I've been put in a position where do I follow the advice of the city attorney when he says I should abstain, or do I follow what the opinion of the investigator was that I made an error by abstaining? So I've got two different attorneys that have given me different advice, and I don't think I should be in the position of having to have my own personal attorney sit there at a council meeting with me to answer how I should answer, given the conflict between two other attorneys. I just think that's getting to the point of being ridiculous.
What's your message to the people of Joplin?
My message is we have to stay focused on the tornado recovery. That will affect us for decades to come. We have other issues that we're addressing right now, and those will play out over time, a relatively short period of time, I think. But the tornado recovery is where we have to stay focused, because if we get off track and we lose the momentum of that recovery, we're going to pay the price for that for decades to come. And I think it could be 20, 30, maybe 50 years. And of course, I'm speculating, but it could have significant consequences for us. And I'm just very concerned about where the future takes us.
Do you have any concerns, given this report, about any of the other work that you've done that does not involve Wallace Pajali, but also may involve properties that are being redeveloped? Do you have any other concerns about approaching the public works staff on zoning issues? Have you reconsidered the way that you conduct your business?
I've given that a little thought, Debbie. I don't have any real concerns. I think you could go up to zoning and planning or public works or whatever and ask anyone to please up there and find out that I do go in periodically to review where a sewer line is, or where a utility easement may be, or a zoning issue, questions about that. But I don't think you'll find anybody in any of those departments that feels like I've strong-armed them or made reference that this is a project that I'm particularly interested in and that I need to have a certain outcome, anything like that. I don't think you'll find anybody that would tell you that they felt that way.
And so can you just tell us what specifically was the process when it came to you voting in council and when there were times that it might have been a conflict of interest and you had to abstain? What was the, I guess the process, what were the factors that had to be there in order for you to abstain? When you saw this, it was suggested that you shouldn't vote? Well,
typically the tip-off was a property address. If I would have a client that was had made a negotiation, put together an agreement to purchase a property, when that property came up, I would let the city staff make the presentation, and then I would declare that I had a financial interest in that property. The city attorney would go through a couple of routine questions that he would ask, and then tell me that I would basically abstain, which I did. And I would not participate in the discussion or the vote on that particular piece of property. So anything where I was going to collect a commission, that was the process. Relative to the properties over on 20th and Connecticut, there was one property over there that I did collect a commission. That was closed in May of 2012. That was negotiated before the city had signed the agreement with the Wallace Pajali firm. And anytime any of those properties in that area that we put together, I waived my commission on those. I told them probably 18 calls. Waived my commission on those because I was fearful that there could be some city or government money involved in those, and I didn't want to put myself in that position. And relative to that, Charles Keene from Four State Homes, he and I visited with the city attorney probably in kind of the late summer, early fall of 2012 to familiarize the city attorney with our working relationship, mine and Charles Keene's, and how we were working together, and asked specifically, how do we avoid any conflict of interest? How do we avoid any appearance of impropriety? And whatever the city manager, or I'm sorry, the city attorney advised us, that's how we proceed in the future. So I feel like I've taken the steps to do the right ethical thing, and I don't know what more I could have done.
How much money would you have made on those transactions had you accepted the fees?
Probably in the range somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000.
And lastly, for me, maybe, there was one instance in the investigation that you admitted to receiving fees for a transaction that I'm assuming was in connection with Wallace Pajali. What happened in that specific instance?
It was not in conjunction with Wallace Pajali. It was before the city signed that agreement. I had indirectly had a client that had an office in that area prior to the tornado. Their desire was to acquire some adjoining properties where they would rebuild their office and build a small commercial strip center. That was how we operated when we put together that first transaction. That closing was in May of 2012, and it wasn't until September, October timeframe that there began to be some discussion of the library over in that neighborhood. And again, anything after, I think it was July the 3rd, we signed the Wallace Pajali agreement. anything